All right, hello guys. We should be live, hopefully. We're going to be talking the season 2 finale. And yeah, so the episode happened. The suffering is finally over, you know. That's a positive. I can say that's good about it. But outside of that, this episode wasn't good. We'll talk about all these different areas. I actually don't know if the stream's actually good. It's not actually telling me on YouTube. Let me make sure before. Okay, now we're good. All right, so let's talk about all the things that happened in this episode, and it's a lot of things that happened that were not properly really built up to. So, for instance, you have Durin, who has basically he's gotten a dwarfen ring, and in the span of like an episode, he just is on a murdering rampage of killing dwarves, and he's gonna awaken the Balrog and all this stuff. And so what ends up occurring, so in episode 7, right, the dwarves don't march to Eregion to help Elrond because of the king. And the king has basically gotten like these superhuman powers and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, kind of weird. But you have an army, right? Like, you're telling me you can't subdue one dude? Like, and I get it, it's your king, but obviously he's not really in power anymore. If you already were assembling all of your forces to go help Eregion, you can subdue one guy. So apparently they didn't do that. And so we just go to this weird scene where Durin is basically just breaking shit down by himself. And so all this is going on. And he finally breaks the wall that gets into basically the heart of the mountain and whatever. And guess what? The Balrog happens. Now, let's not forget, that in the lore, if they just did a quick Google search, they would know that the Balrog doesn't awaken or have any impact for at least another age. Okay? So, whatever, right? The TV show doesn't care about the actual material that Tolkien wrote, whatever. Fine. So the Balrog comes out, and I won't lie, he looked great. I thought the Balrog looked awesome. I think they did it pretty well for the most part. But we see that both the Durins, they talk to each other, and they're basically like, oh yeah, Prince Durin, you're not going to kill me or chop my finger off. You're not going to harm me because you just won't. And they have this big old spiel about their past and all this stuff. And I'm just sitting here, I'm just like, I don't really care because you've shown me what the ring does to this Durin, and he's not really a character anymore. And so him just being able to almost snap out of that at the last second, maybe because he realizes what the ring has done and there's a Balrog in front of him, maybe that's what prompts him to like have this heart-to-heart moment where he takes the ring off and all this stuff, which is just crazy to me. I like, it just seems like it's very inconsistent about how the actual ring's powers work. And so then we have this scene where it's like Durin basically jumps at the Balrog, which makes it's just very cringy. It doesn't really look right, in my opinion. And another thing I want to point out in this episode, because I noticed it a lot in this one, and I don't know if they do it consistently throughout the show, but it was just more noticeable in this episode. They really like to do slow-mo shots of people just looking at things. I've noticed that quite a lot in this show. Like, there's a lot of times in this episode where you just have people looking at things, and they're staring at them a lot. So, for instance, like Game of Thrones Season 8, one of the things that, you notice in like the finale, right, is Tyrion. There's a lot of a section of the beginning of it where it's just Tyrion. It's close zooms ins of his face, and it's not really doing much for the actual like show. It doesn't have any really relevance to be there outside of just taking time up. So I don't know, like, so yeah, this whole cold open, quote unquote, because it happens right before the main, intro starts, the Rings of Power intro. It's supposed to be a cold open. I'm just sitting here and I'm like, okay, that was really weird because now the Balrog is awoken, but then the pass is destroyed. So apparently that's going to stop the Balrog from destroying Moria yet? I'm so like, I just don't understand, because then they set up this other stuff by the end of the episode. So let's just go by the dwarf plot first. Okay? So we then see that again, happens all off screen, by the way. After this point, all this stuff happens off screen. So off screen, the dwarves then, their army is sent to Eregion. Now, how much of it is an actual army? I have no idea, because in the battle when the dwarves show up at Eregion to save the day, it's like 20 guys with crossbows and they're already in Eregion. It's not like they're fighting like to get to Eregion. Like think about like the Rohirrim, when they get to Minas Tirith, how we see them arrive to the battlefield, and then they start working towards getting to Gondor and or Minas Tirith, I should say, and trying to free the city. Well, here it's like if you removed all of that, and then just randomly when you saw Gandalf and Pippin at the last gate where they're talking about like death, for instance, that's when you see the dwarves or the Rohirrim pop up. Right at that point, like you see them start shooting them in the back. You don't know how they got there. You don't know any of that. There's no build up to it. It just happens. That's what this happens in this show, is that the dwarves just show up. And Elrond is like, oh, Durin, you came. Durin didn't come because, his father died. He's in grief, whatever. So then by the end of the episode, the dwarves, they're basically like, oh, Durin, you have people that are going to challenge your claim. And I'm just like, apparently Durin has a brother that's been off screen this whole time. And there's these other dwarves that like, okay, they do the same thing, by the way, with the Numenor plot, where they're like, oh yeah, there's a character off screen that very obviously should have been in the show by now, but for some reason he's not, because we've run out of things of what we're supposed to do. Because like now Khazad-dûm has basically been reduced to, okay, well, the Balrog's here, so are we doing the Fall of Moria, or are we just gonna stall it for a little while and then have that in season 5, however long this show is gonna go? The last season, I would assume, is Fall of Moria. So now it's like we have to buy time for that to happen, but the Balrog's already been awoken, and you know that, but yet you're going to fuck around with the politics. Like, what? So yeah. Also, hi, Matthew. Ain't watched it yet, but I really don't give a shit to rush out and see it. Yeah, it wasn't very good. It wasn't as bad as episode 7, but like, it just wasn't very good. Durin's Bane and Gandalf arrived about an age where, yeah, they also confirmed Gandalf. So we'll talk about that. Grand Elf equals God. We're gonna talk about that, Ruckus. I guess we'll talk about that next, maybe. Miserable molestation of the lore, Ruckus. Agreed. And there's something that's even worse about the Grand Elf thing, but we'll get there. Anarion got the Daron treatment. Yeah, apparently he's off screen the whole time. Why? It makes no sense that Anarion hasn't been part of the story up until now, and then he just gets mentioned off screen. So yeah, so the dwarf plot is left in a very weird position that doesn't really make much sense. It went from being probably the strongest plot line of the early part of the season to, it's still probably the strongest because everything else is just utter terrible or utter just trash. So it's like still kind of the strongest, but in its of itself is broken. So yeah, also the dwarves still have all of the rings. They haven't been passed out or anything. Like, I don't even know. So whatever. So let's go to, the Harfoots and Gandalf. So things just happened so quickly. Like, if you think about all season long, the Harfoots have been slow. Their pacing has been terribly slow. Nothing has happened. They are irrelevant to the plot. And then all of a sudden, the last episode of the show, Gandalf instantly finds the Harfoots, but also finds Sauron out of nowhere. It's not Sauron confirmed, but he's Sauron. And then so Sauron, who, again, remember, this is the Second Age. Sauron is not supposed to betray or be an evil guy until the Third Age and late into the Third Age. So we see Sauron's already evil. He's basically trying to, persuade Gandalf of all these things and manipulate him and manipulate the Harfoots. And it's like, okay, if you want to go down that route, sure. But Saruman, the main thing that Saruman has, and it's made very clear in the book, and this is the stuff that they have. This isn't the Silmarillion. This is stuff they have. Saruman's main thing that he used was his voice, right? Even when he was at his weakest, his lowest point, he almost seemed to sway the people of Rohan when they come to Isengard after, Treebeard and the Ents have already did their attack on it and all that in Helm's Deep. He's able to almost sway people because of how powerful his voice is, right? He gets people to come to his side. He manipulates people. He couldn't even do that in the Second Age against a Gandalf that didn't even know any of his powers and 2 Harfoots. Okay. So then Gandalf, again, or not Gandalf, and then Saruman, who again is not supposed to be evil yet, decides to fling a bunch of rocks down on them, and then Gandalf stops it. But how does anything go forward that Saruman, like how is Saruman going to be the person that is apparently good and the wise person? Like, it makes no sense. Unless, like, Gandalf has his memory wiped again and the Harfoots die, this makes no sense. So that doesn't make any sense at all. It just like we sped through stuff that probably should have been given a couple episodes to develop, whatever. Then, as Ruckus brought up, they start calling Gandalf Grand Elf. I want you guys to remember, Gandalf was mind wiped before meeting the Harfoots. The only people Gandalf has even met to this point are Harfoots, whatever the other off-brand Harfoots are called, don't care. These Easternling-looking guys, Tom Bombadil and now Saruman. He has not even met a fucking elf. He doesn't know what that even means. And so then he goes, okay, so he's like, oh, they're calling me Grand Elf. And then he just randomly finds his staff on the ground somewhere. And, okay. And then the Harfoots seem like they're going to go do their Shire plot. They're splitting from Gandalf. And then, whatever. Okay, hopefully that means for the next season, the Harfoots are not even going to be part of the show. Hopefully that's what they're saying. I don't even think the show should get another season, but if they're going to, at least just get rid of the Harfoots. And then Gandalf goes back to Tom Bombadil, and Tom Bombadil's like, oh, this was all a test. And I'm like, fuck off. This was not a test. Fuck off. This is dog shit writing. And then they're like, Gandalf, did you find your name in the staff? And then the staff chooses you, and whatever. And then Gandalf is like, great, called me Grand Elf, so I'm gonna be called Gandalf. Fuck you. Just fuck off. Such trash writing. And then they start singing, and I'm just like, just stop. And they reveal that, oh yeah, this is Gandalf. It's like, oh, it's not like we all knew that like 2 years ago. Like, wow, what a payoff. Oh boy. I'm gonna read some chat before we continue. He's just been hiding out in western Numenor fishing while his brother has presumably died and his dad has been exiled. Oh, and his sister is a Kingsman. Yes, and also his dad was on trial to die. So, yeah, there's that. We get another season of Wizard Name Mystery Box. Yeah, it's not like it's obviously Sauron, and if it isn't Sauron, it doesn't make any sense. The Dar death was a complete copy and paste job of Jon Snow's death. Yeah, more or less. Did Tom show up much? He showed up for one scene, and it was probably one of the worst scenes of the entire episode. So, yeah. So, moving away from that, let's go to Numenor. So, Numenor basically is just Elendil is getting, or the faithful, more or less, are getting persecuted because there's some sort of document that they give to the faithful, but it's more just like we're rounding up the faithful because they are connected with Sauron, and that's how Sauron was able to, or how Miriel was able to beat the trial, but we don't know what the information they're even telling them is. It's just like, here's a document. And so then they start persecuting all of the faithful and then like getting them all imprisoned, and Miriel's taken as a hostage or whatever, and she tells Elendil to leave, and that's kind of where you get that shot from the vision that like, oh, there's some smoke going up, and Elendil leaves, and he's gonna go see Anarion or whatever, or Narion, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. This doesn't make any sense in my opinion. But okay, whatever. So Elendil leaves, blah, 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 blah. That's about it. I reread The Fellowship of the Ring during the hurricane down here in the southeast, and Tom is so good in the book, and Gandalf. Agreed. Galadriel surfing that fall was absolutely brained. Even, okay, Ruckus, we're going to get there. You're already ahead of the game, okay? So let's talk about the last plot before we get to the elves. So you then have the plot line with... Theo, that's the kid's name, right? Yeah, Theo and Isildur. And so apparently they're all buddy now. I don't know when this fucking happened. I guess it happened off screen and they had a connection. I know like Theo listened in on one conversation from like, what, episode 5 maybe? Or something like that. And now they're buddy, which makes no sense at all. So they're just buddy now. and Isildur is going to go to Numenor, and then he's also going to take this other woman that he's been off and on with for the whole season, and they're, making out, and then, they're talking about, wait, I actually have, like a husband or a betrothed or whatever the situation is. And Isildur's like, don't care. We're meant to be together, And so we see other dude come over from, Numenor, Pharazôn's kid. I don't remember what the guy's name is because he's just a moron. Something with like a K or something, Kemen or I don't know, something weird. And so he's like, no, we're going to use, your little village as our own little base and all this stuff. And we're taking over. And yeah. And Isildur's like, wait. I'm going to come with you. I'm going to come with, I'm going to go back to Numenor, all that stuff. But I also got my woman I got to take with me. And the funniest part of this scene is like, the woman is standing right next to the person that like is her husband or betrothed or whatever. And he's just like, what? What'd you say? It's just like, what is going on in this show? And then they're like, nah, I can't do that, Isildur. And then they both just fuck off. And I'm just like, okay. So that happened. That was something. Something did happen, but yeah. So that gets us to the elf plot. And the elf plot is just all over the place. There's some good in here. Like the actual like Sauron and Celebrimbor, the ending to that plot line is pretty solid. Like him actually torturing Celebrimbor, it's more than I thought we were gonna get. All that was kind of cool. All that stuff was cool. I don't like that Sauron was crying after Celebrimbor's death. That was just wild. Oh yeah, I forgot about Narsil. Oh yeah, so Matthew, there's this really cringe scene that basically imagine, Aragorn getting Narsil, or not Narsil, Anduril in Return of the King. Imagine how that looked, and then just replay it in your mind. That's what happens with Elendil getting the sword. That's the exact thing. It's the exact same. The whole movement. It's a copy and paste from Peter Jackson's films. So, yeah. But so we have all this stuff, and Sauron off screen, I might add, after he gets done with Celebrimbor. I hate it. I hate that he's crying. It makes no fucking sense. He is literally the dark. Like, okay, whatever. But then we see what ends up occurring, and the orcs are like, "Oh, are you Sauron? Are you the guy?" And Sauron's like, I have many names or whatever. And then it cuts away from this scene. Okay, because we want to, do a plot twist, but it doesn't make any sense because you don't show us any of the plot twist. So there's that going on. Now, the other part of this is that Galadriel, so I talked about how, she got, wait, that happened in episode 7 or episode 8? Either way, she gets captured, okay? And so she goes to Adar, but she says that she has 9 rings. She quite literally gives away the 9, or she was about to give away the 9 rings within literally 5 minutes of getting them. So she goes to Adar, and Adar's looking all cutie, I'm elfy looking again because he put on Galadriel's ring. Whatever. And so that only works temporarily when he has the ring on. If he takes the ring off, it's different. But Galadriel's like, oh, we can work together now. It's like, what are you talking about? What have you this army has just slaughtered pretty much every single elf. There's only like 20 elves by the end of the episode, so I'm assuming the elves got wiped out. Like, what are we talking about? And then, so it's just such a cringe scene. Okay, so then Galadriel and Adar are just talking about nonsense, and Adar even gets to a point where he's like, "Oh yeah, my name before," and they kind of pause, right? They're sitting there like, okay, what's the name going to be? I thought for certain it was going to be Celeborn. I was so close just being like, if they said some stupid nonsense like, oh, Celeborn, I'm Celeborn, I'm going to be your husband and all this. Like, thankfully he didn't. He just said, I'm nobody, more or less. He pulled an Arya, okay? He basically was like, I am no one type situation. And then, orc number 2 guy comes in, the guy that's got a family and stuff. He comes in all injured and says that Sauron, got away and kind of messed him up. And you're sitting here like, okay, obviously that's not the case. And so Adar basically gets the, as we talked about earlier, the Jon Snow treatment. He got stabbed in the stomach a bunch of times, like just repeatedly. I think it's wild we can show that, but we can't show, you know, like Celebrimbor basically getting like his head put on a pike and stuff like that. But no, we can show that. It's fine. And Adar's death means absolutely nothing. Just doesn't mean anything. So yeah, I don't know why Galadriel just doesn't put her ring back on Adar's finger, and he'd probably come back to life or some other fucking bullshit that this show brings up, but whatever. And then the whole time, and this is what I mean when I said at the beginning of the stream that there's a bunch of random like slow-mos of facial shots, and they last way too long, and it's consistent throughout this entire episode. Galadriel has one of those where she's just like, oh wow, that's crazy, dude. But then she got like other, like she sees Sauron coming up. It's like, oh man, maybe I should leave. Given I have the 9 rings and one of the elven rings directly in front of Sauron, maybe I should leave. She doesn't leave. So then, you know, Sauron and Galadriel have a pretty cringe fighting scene that looks terrible in my opinion. Like it just wasn't choreographed that well in my opinion. I mean, him Sauron using like Melkor's crown was kind of cool at times, but like the actual sword fighting of it looked terrible in my opinion. The actual fight looks bad. It's supposed to be played that Sauron is just playing with Galadriel, but like there's so many times when Sauron should just kill Galadriel. He has so many opportunities. One of them's in the thumbnail for the live stream. Okay? And then, you know, you get the rings. You can pick the rings off her body. Whatever. Even when he gets the 9 and he only has to get like the, you know, the elven ring off of her, you know, he has to get Nenya, but Sauron doesn't kill her. And then Galadriel is like, oh, and this act of defiance, right? She's like, oh, I'm not gonna give you the ring or anything. She throws her fucking self off of a cliff. What was the point of that? Do you not think Sauron and orcs can walk down a cliff and get your body? How about take the ring off and just fucking chuck it somewhere? Nope. So, yeah. And it's even more cringe that Sauron and the orcs don't go get her body and take the ring. It is quicker. Okay, keep this in mind. It is quicker to get to Galadriel's body, which is in some random-ass hill, whatever, by Gil-galad and Elrond, who are fighting in the middle of Eregion, can see her body from like a couple miles off, like dropping in the middle of a fight, by the way. They get out of the fight apparently somehow, get right to her body before Sauron or any orcs can drag her body off, kill her, take the ring, whatever. Like, what? What are we doing? And the fact that she's alive. That's the other part of this is like, it's Galadriel, so you know she's not going to die because the show won't function if she dies. You're just sitting here like, how does she live? She gets impaled, okay, like right here, and has multiple stab wounds, or at least like, you know, Sauron hit her with his sword. And she's alive. She's alive somehow. They're treating this as like, oh yeah, it's like Frodo, you know, when he gets stabbed by the Morgul blade from the Witch King. This ain't that. This is not that. She gets stabbed by that. Say it has the same effect. Whatever. She falls off of like a 200-foot cliff. How is she alive? Oh, God. Okay, so... Oh, I didn't even bring up Arondir is also still alive. Remember how you guys in chat, last week were like, no, Arondir's dead. What are you talking about? You know, I knew they would pull some cringe shit. I knew it. I knew Arondir was not dead because they didn't confirm it. They didn't confirm his death. They just showed him getting stabbed. Guess what? In this episode, no stab wounds, nothing. He looks fine. He's doing elf shit. He's fine. And apparently Arondir, who's just this random guy, is now like a general or something. Beyond me. So then the cringe lords Gil-galad and Elrond and Arondir and all that stuff, they go find Galadriel out in the forest because they saw her from, again, a couple miles off, just randomly falling while they're being attacked by orcs because they're about to be, you know, they basically have lost the battle and the orcs were basically rounding them up for Sauron. And then they begin fighting when the dwarves get there. Somehow the dwarves got it past all their lines to Eregion. Nobody knows. So they go to Galadriel, and Gil-galad's like, oh, I can't heal her. And then Elrond puts on Galadriel's ring. Now, I thought they were going to do something like Galadriel has her own ring on, so that would help with the injuries? No. They had just had Elrond put on her ring, and then she gets healed, and she's fine. Keep in mind, Galadriel, I don't care what her stab wound injury is. Her falling off of the cliff, there would be no body to heal. She's an elf, not a, like, Maiar or whatever. Holy cow, this episode is so devoid of any logic, any, like, rational thinking, like, anything. So then Galadriel, like, after Sauron leaves, because cringe Lord Sauron didn't walk down a hill and go get the ring, he just let them get it, I guess. You would have thought even, like, maybe put some orc archers, like, over her body or something, like, something. No, whatever. So then Sauron just kind of fucks off because apparently the orcs have lost the battle because of the dwarves. I wouldn't know based on the scale or the shooting of the episode. And he just kills the orc just to show, oh yeah, he's no different than Adar. He's just worse. It's like, okay, whatever. I don't know why we have this plot then the whole season. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, okay. And then, so we go to Galadriel, and, all the elves, they retreated to basically where Rivendell will be, or Imladris. I can't say that well. And Galadriel's like, we're gonna fight. And the funniest part about this scene is, they're going to fight Sauron with like 50 dudes. It does like a panning shot, and it looks like you have like maybe 50 guys. That's it. That's all that's left. That's all that's left of the Elven Kingdom, it seems like. So that's... Yeah, and then they do this like really cringe shot at the end with like Gil-galad having a sword out and all this like Avengers like look thing, and I'm just like, okay, this was just too much cringe for me. But yeah, Nenya is basically the one ring in this show. Every ring in this show is basically the one ring. The dwarves are supposed to be able to resist them, but apparently that's not the case. If Disa gets violently killed, or if Disa gets killed as violently as Adar, the show will slightly redeem itself for me. Yeah, I'm tired. I really hope we don't see Disa sing anymore. That's just the most cringe that you have in this show. Anyone else notice every time Disa is on screen, they have her showing some leg? Like, I don't know why. That's kind of, I don't know. Arondir kind of forgot he got stabbed. Yep. Apparently, stabs mean nothing. Hi, Radical. How are you? Arondir will go to find the Woodland Realm or some shit. Yeah, probably. I personally liked episode 8. It was a 7.7 to me. I'm glad you liked Radical. There was not much in this episode I liked. I think the way they, designed visually stuff was good at times. I thought, some things that you pick and choose or sometimes is good. I don't know. The whole show to me, it just had nothing. It felt like a very hollow show. I have no idea how the show is getting renewed for a third season. I posted something on Twitter about this, or X, but like, this show doesn't function. It doesn't function. Nothing like works. There's not a single good plot line in this show. I like how the elves and dwarves are overwhelming the orcs, yet they still retreat. Yeah, it makes no sense. If apparently they were overwhelming the orcs enough that Sauron had to retreat with the orcs, why is there 50 guys at Rivendell? I don't know. The only thing that in this episode I hated was the Gandalf ordeal. I think the Hardfoots will be written out of the series going forward. Hopefully. Radical, I'm glad you bought into that. I did not. Yeah, I just thought it was stupid. It was very like just cringe and stupid to me. But Radical, they may hope they have 5 seasons, but there's no plan. There is no plan to this show. You can tell based off of season 1 and season 2, there's no plan. Absolutely not. Because season 2, a lot of the things they tried to do early in the season was to rewrite season 1, and it didn't work. But yeah, I respect your opinion as well, Radical. I just yeah, I didn't have much positive on the episode. I pretty much hated majority of what we got in this episode. But yeah, that's going to be a stream. That is my review for the finale. I'm probably going to do a video reviewing the entire show for season 2. But yeah, I'll see